When we think about identity, we often imagine our thoughts, who we believe we are, what we think we deserve, what stories we tell ourselves. But long before we ever had thoughts, we had feelings. And even before that, we had sensations. In infancy, identity isn't something we think, it's something we feel and sensate. An infant doesn't have language, reasoning, or beliefs. It can't decide, I'm unworthy or I'm unloved. It can only experience the world through the body, through warmth or coldness, tension or calm, being held or being left alone. Aloneness isn't experienced through the concept of abandonment, it's felt as existential fear. That means our earliest sense of self is built entirely through the body's experiences. When an infant is held, fed, soothed, and met with a smiling face, the body records safety. It learns I exist, I matter, a natural developmental eccentricity or egocentricity. But when the infant's needs aren't met, when there's an absence of touch, a lack of responsive facial cues, when crime brings no comfort, the body records something very different. The infant learns through absence. It learns that it's alone, expressed as fearfulness. With repetition, this absence and aloneness experience becomes fearful and will invite overstimulation of pathways to the amygdala part of the primitive brain. Because as infants, we cannot undertake fight or flight. Infants can, however, freeze. Whatever the felt experience, it can only be introjected into the body. There isn't a neurological construct that invites any cognitive thoughts or beliefs, because an infant can't think that way yet. It's an embodied imprint, a deep, wordless knowing that lives in muscle, breath, and our nervous system. And over time, those early sensations can crystallize into patterns that follow us into childhood and eventually adulthood. Many clients come to therapy describing persistent bodily symptoms, tension that never leaves, with consistent or intermittent, perhaps stomach discomfort, fatigue, or even visual disturbances. Clients may try to think their way through it, but the mind can't solve what the body encoded before the mind ever developed. These symptoms can sometimes be the body's way of speaking an unspoken truth, a memory without words, because what was most painful in infancy may not be what happened, but what didn't happen. The absence of holding, the absence of being seen, the absence of a face that smiled back. This is why in deep inner child work, we start with the mind as a means of engaging and connecting, but ultimately we can be moving towards therapeutic connection with the body and its negative sensations. We explore what the body feels, senses, and remembers. Because in therapy, particularly early wounds, the body is the portal through which the pre-verbal self can finally speak. As therapists, our role is to attune to this non-verbal language, the subtle movements a client makes, a facial expression, the shallow breath, the way a client's tone softens or tightens. Our presence becomes a kind of translation, a way to meet the unspoken needs that were once unmet. Sometimes this happens through using the client's imagination, depending on whether the client's natural preference is visual as opposed to auditory or kinesthetic. We might ask a client to visualize the bodily sensation, to give it a color, to give it a shape, a form. Equally, a tightness in the chest might become a frightened child. A pressure in the stomach might become a heavy stone. By giving the sensation an image, we give it meaning. And through meaning, the body begins to release what's been held for years. Healing then isn't about finding the right words, it's about finding the right sensation, feeling, or emotion. Allowing the body to express what it couldn't express then, whether that be grief, anger, fear, longing, all of which were once too dangerous to feel. And when that energy finally moves, when the body realizes it's safe now to feel, something remarkable happens. The inner child's identity begins to shift. The self that was once fragmented begins to integrate. The adult self can then finally hold the inner infant, not with logic, but with presence. So if you've ever felt like no amount of thinking, analyzing, or meaningful understanding changes how you feel, it may be because the part of you that was wounded existed before thought. It's not that you can't change, it's that the part of you needing change speaks a very different language, the language of the body. And when you learn to listen to it, to soothe it, to hold it with compassion, the healing doesn't just change your feelings, it transforms your very sense of who you are. Because identity doesn't begin in the mind, it begins in the body. And through the body, we can return to that place where belonging first began, in the felt experience of being held, soothed, seen, and feeling safe. If you'd like help discovering or rediscovering your identity, even at this infant level of wounding, get in touch. Visit my website, book a free discovery call. Let's see what's possible.